It is 5:30 and I am sitting in for Michelle, who is out sick this evening. And Rishi is going to be a little bit late. So Jessica, if you would record attendance otherwise. And we are going to call the DDA Board of or Authority Board of Directors meeting for May 20th to order. If we could get an approval of tonight's agenda, please.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second. Chris and Scott. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, Article 3, the approval of March 18th, 2025 meeting minutes. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to take a look at those. And if agreed upon, if I could have somebody approve of those meeting minutes, please.
I approve of those meetings.
I'll second.
And second by Grace, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then we had the special April 17th meeting, the combined with the board for the OHM. There again, if we could get approval of those meeting minutes. Thank you.
Second.
And thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Outstanding. Then we move along to Article 5, which is the village design next steps discussion. Jade, I believe this is all you, correct?
Yep, thank you. So on April 17th is when we had the final presentation concept meeting with OHM in this room here. They presented their final concepts. And both the board of trustees were here and the DDA board. Most of the DDA board was here. I understand there were some sound issues on the presentation, so I apologize for that if anyone went back to watch it. Overall, we had really good comments. And then, of course, anyone that was there, please chime in at any time. But good comments, good discussion around roads, traffic, and then, you know, moving forward with the park design itself. One of the things that came out of that meeting was working with the supervisors, the other electeds. I know Michelle weighed in last night on a comment in regards to today's meeting is we are going to go out for a formal RFQ, request for qualifications. We're not going to go out for request for proposal. Requests for proposals are usually they're based upon $1. And I think we really want the qualifications of a good firm as opposed to just, you know, saying, yes, you're the cheapest, we're going to go with you. So request for qualifications lets us receive bids from vendors, consultants that will provide architectural design, engineering, and then the overall management of the project. And we'll go through an interview process. I talked with Grace today about that. But just to run through that timeline, I have the RFQ in draft format here. And it's going to go on the streets and be published next Thursday. The 29th of May, we will have a deadline for questions from any interested firm by June 6th. And I probably should clarify that this is not for them to turn in a final design at this point. This is to turn in their qualifications to be the firm that can produce the final design and work with the DDA and the board of trustees in regards to creating that final vision.
So with this RFQ, is it on the entire project or are we looking at probably the park first?
Yeah, this is for the Tassel Park, Doctor's Office, and the Tuffy site. So it's a total of about a little over 4 acres, but it's all of that property right there. Yep.
Okay.
So we have a deadline for questions, for clarifications. I like to do that because it just kind of it just makes the process flow better if you allow people to ask you some questions and then keep everybody on the same playing field. Submissions for the bids or qualifications will be due back on June 16th. And then I have in here that we will review those bids and conduct interviews the week of June 23rd and hopefully bring a contract back to the DDA at the July meeting. So hopefully by July 15th, we'll know exactly, you know, who we're going with, feel really comfortable, have enough conversations with the firms. We can bring back a really good recommendation to the board. And when I mean the board, I mean the DDA board. And then from there, then starts the fun work of doing the final design and engineering, and all that good stuff. So the hope would be that awarding this in 2025 and getting through that process. Lauren Ancerini, who is the township finance director, is here. She's going to talk about the bonding process. So while we're working with the firm on the design and moving forward there, we then can be working on the finance part of it. And then hopefully in 2026, we can actually have shovels in the ground and start construction on the sites and make the improvements.
And I apologize if you already mentioned this, Jade, but who is gonna be vetting the final company? Yourself?
Myself, I'll have supervisor. Treasurer Corsange has been very active in this process, and then probably Andrea, planning director, and Eric Thorne, our engineer.
Okay.
Yep.
What if you pick a firm and then when everything's said and done, their price is just outrageous? Is their pricing kind of part of the interview process?
It'll be part of it, of course. Yeah, there'll be a component. Actually in the RFQ, there are aspects that we're going to be looking at, and a fee schedule is actually a part of that. So we're looking at obviously their cover letter introduction, the firm profile, the project team and key personnel bios, approach to their project, examples of technology integration and community messaging that they've used, you know, because we want to make sure that the firm can actually assist us with marketing and on the site during this process so that everybody knows what's going on. A fee schedule, references, and then there's we need a minimum of 5 examples of them doing a public park and riverfront design experience, and 5 examples of them participating in public roadway and streetscape improvement experience. So it's pretty thorough for us to go through. So there's a lot of elements, but fee is absolutely included in this. Yeah, and that's where it gets a little subjective too, because they give us the fee schedule, so it'll be I would expect there could be a flat rate or flat amount for this after they look at the concept, but I would also expect additional hourly rates that if we needed to, because then we can cut back the project if we find that we don't want to spend that much money on the park. But then there'll also be hourly rates in there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what we come back. It could be a combination of both. It could be one or it could be the other.
Because they're kind of managing it too. They'd be outsourcing certain construction things too, no?
Yes, they will help with that whole construction process. Yep. Got it.
And how will, if anything, OHM continue to be involved?
They may not.
Like they may be done completely now?
Yeah. They were contracted for phase 1, which was the concept piece. I will be highly surprised if they don't bid on the second phase, which is the design in the final design piece. Correct.
So you're saying that they may be part of this next?
They could be, yes, if they bid on it, and that's the firm that is chosen.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, they're very familiar with the project, so I'm fairly certain they're gonna.
So have
they're
we
gonna-
picked an overall for the whole downtown?
Mm-mm.
No, just this one phase we're done with OHM on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Say that again, Kristen. I don't think I understood.
Do we have the final concept done for the whole downtown village area?
So
From
is
OHM?
that final concept that they presented at the meeting, that is our final concept. For the rest of it, like, I guess hopefully this clarifies it, and if I'm off base, we can go back. Other than the public space that we own or the township owns and controls, everything else is really up to private owners. What OHM provided was the 3 nodes in the village area, and each one of those had a focus of whether it's to be multi-use buildings, residential, redevelopment of the strip mall, additional spaces within that. So they gave the concept so that when we go out and if, let's say we have a developer that says, yep, I'm buying the Walgreens corner. We're like, great, here's a concept. This is what we're thinking of that could go there. Here, and then it's going to complement also what's in our new form-based code, which is being worked on currently with the planning commission and the board of trustees. So that when they look at the village design and we say you could have a 2-story multi-use building they know exactly what it is that we would expect on that corner. So we're not actually doing the full design on any of those.
Can we have Chris, so. Because the form-based code will be huge for village redevelopment and. Even though it's at the planning commission arm of the township, but we've been working really hard on that and it hasn't been approved yet. At the planning commission level or the board, it's still in the draft form. We should have OHM, Chris, Corey,
You mean McKenna?
what, yeah. We
Yeah.
should have McKenna, not present on that, because that has way more substance and teeth.
Yep.
Than,
Yeah, so you're right. The concept is literally, take a piece of property and if it gets developed or redeveloped, what we'd like to see as far as a use goes. But then the form-based code dictates what it will the look and feel of it and how we get to that village look. So actually at our June meeting, I will see if Chris is available to come through and go through. At that point, they should have the zoning in a draft format, I believe.
at least for the village.
Yeah, so he can come in and talk about some of the highlights of the village area and some of the things that the planning commission and board have found to be priority for that type of, that form-based code. And he can walk through that.
And that would also apply to facade improvements too, right? So maybe
Mhm.
that's a good roadmap or template for, so people have an idea what kind of improvements would qualify.
Yeah, it's been quite the process because there really was there was an overlay for the village area, but it really wasn't any different than the rest of the development standards in the townships. So this form-based code will literally take the boundaries of that village area and then create so that you'll know if everything got redeveloped in the next 5 years, it would all be very complementary of each other. It would have some very similar characteristics from building to building and development to development. So it creates that consistency so that I always use this as an example and it's not against the business that's there. It's just, it doesn't fit. But you look at Tommy's Car Wash or the new Domino's building that have recently been done in the DDA district. And granted, they're not quite in the village. It doesn't really fit any sort of architectural standards or form base that the township wants. So if one of those were to relocate to the village, they may look like they're in a more traditional building. They could still have the Domino's sign, but it would look completely different. And they would follow some design standards.
So I guess really three comments. First is, I think we need to remember too, that this whole process could take up to 20 years plus to even happen.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, so paint that picture. So if JT's decides to sell their property, does the township say we want first right of refusal, or they can sell to anybody, but hey, new buyer, this is what we're looking at. And even though that right now in the concept that OHM provided, that may turn into like a residential subdivision area.
Right.
So as the owner, so to speak, of JT's, it's like, how am I going to sell this?
Right. So a couple different options. One is the township, I don't think would be adverse to purchasing property and trying to get this vision, but I think that needs to be budgeted. And then obviously there's got to be the will of the board and the DDA to make that investment. Two, a lot of developers, I think, and especially in Cascade, it's so desirable that I could see developers taking our concept plans. And if they heard that JT's was selling, they probably would knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, we want to buy your property. And it'll be a progression.
And what kicks it is when there's redevelopment, when they want to change the building.
Well, right, but what he's saying is if someone bought it, because that area is in the concept residential.
Yeah.
Where JT's is at. So if someone did buy that large piece of property, they probably would inquire on the properties around there as well.
But if they bought it and didn't want to change it, it can stay.
It can stay, yep.
Exactly as it is, as a restaurant, as whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
But if they modified it, or they came in and they said, we want to do an addition and we want to update the facade, then with the form-based code, they have to then comply. The new owners, or even the current owners for that matter, if they want to do any sort of changes, have to comply with the form-based code.
At some point in time, would the zoning of it change to residential?
It's
Or whatever, it's probably not residential zoning because it would be some type of a commercial residential.
right. It's written in the master plan as a future, like that's the future of that property. I think I
Is
have
it, or is it
that.
like, it's more, so with the form-based code, it's not so much residential, commercial, it's more the setbacks and height and
Yeah,
the type of, or sorry, the the actual building itself? And how would you put, is
Yeah,
it
but-
mixed use allowed
well,
in there?
Yeah, but that particular area though, where JT's is at up and down there, if you look at the concept for consideration was residential. So if someone were able to come in and take up all that property down Old 28th on that side, then they said we want to put in this type of housing, which comes back to the form-based code that dictates what that can look like. Is it 2-story, 2.5-story brownstone, single family, multifamily, that type of thing? All of that was laid out in the concept. And by no means does it doesn't have to be exactly what's in the concept. The concept is literally just, this is what we'd like to see here.
So we kind of have
Be
to,
like
Could be, yep,
we kind of have to plant the seed with developers now,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
when it does.
Have we talked at all about the potential closing down of Old 28th Street at Cascade Road at the DDA level?
I think that was.
It was in the-
That was brought
it
up.
was in the plans, yeah.
I'm
I
just
think
curious.
that,
I'm just curious the DD members' thoughts on it and like pro neg, you know, it's the kind of thing that has to be vetted. Have
It's close.
By using Old 28th. So half the cars go Old 28th and the other half, so to speak.
Be closed down Old 28th because it makes that way more walkable. I'm not opposed to the idea.
I just have a question. So I
don't
think
know.
Grace, you said the last meeting, we don't own Cascade Road.
Right, the road commission has authority over that.
Do we own Old 28th?
No, but it's
No.
not a major, what's the word? It's not a major route, so the road commission.
Yeah.
Cascade Road, what would they call it? Truck, what's the word for it?
Route?
Yep.
It's a
So
trunk
like
road.
they have to, X number of cars pass through it and their whole thing is like, we're focused on safety, getting cars, through. And so we're limited in what, they are very picky about what they can do because it's just simply the sheer number of people using it. Old 28th Street is not an important route.
So we have
And
a
also
little
and 28th Street itself is built to hold that kind of traffic, whereas Old 28th Street, it's not critical for them, so they have been much more open to, doing bump outs or closing them out, whatever, they are not concerned about traffic. They don't need it as far as traffic flow.
So we have a little bit.
And in many ways,
Oh,
sometimes it's more dangerous because they like the idea of fewer curb cuts.
Mhm.
And that old 28th Street, which we see now exaggerated, right, as with the construction, it's not good to have it, two that necessarily
the
for
road breaks
efficiency.
down there like constant.
I haven't used that as a shortcut in years.
And now it doesn't.
It doesn't work. No, it doesn't work. You get there.
really
Actually, right now, they're in construction.
It's not a
Oh, you-
shortcut.
Yeah, it's not at all.
Sometimes if it's middle of the day and there's nobody there, I do, but not when it's busy.
Yeah, we have a lot more leeway with Old 28th and Thornton River Drive for anything we want to do. The other roads are actually old state trunk lines because that used to actually be the highway, the state highway.
Yes.
So we have a real hard time changing the speed and then also changing just the makeup of that road. Because if something does happen at 96, Cascade Road is an automatic detour that is really hard to convince them to make changes. And you have to involve the state at that point. I can tell you, we've got really good relationship with the county, with the road commission right now. Grace and I were just at a meeting last week and ran into Jerry, who's the director, and told him that I said, hey, we've got our concept done now. We've got some ideas for some of the streets we need to get together. And he said, yes, do it. Let's do it. We've got a couple people that are getting close to retirement on the road commission, so we need to move fast on getting some of these concepts approved and go through the right process. But Eric Thorne, our engineer, has been in contact with them too, and will be the liaison for any of those.
And again, since I couldn't hear everything that was from the meeting. And as you're talking about Thornapple River Drive, during their initial presentation, there was conversation by the residents saying, hey, any thought of making it a one-way?
Mhm.
Is that still kind of in talks to do? And is it one way going from Cascade out to Berger or the other direction? You know?
There is still talk, the road commission's open, and then Grace, the direction I think is I can't remember which direction
But it was from-
everyone's in
Oh,
favor of.
it's going.
Everybody always
from-
uses north, south, and I'm still directionally challenged, so I don't know which direction.
It would be taking from Tuffy, away from that busy intersection, so from Tuffy towards Berger, yep. And then if it did happen, it would be after Tassel Park, so the kind of turnaround in that park, at the end of the park, where right now there's a small parking lot. Make that a bigger turnaround, street parking. And then the one-way starts and it would end before Berger.
Wait, what?
Does that make sense? Is that right?
So,
So it's,
So it's two-way.
So
from
people could,
Thornhill
say you're
down
coming
to
from the,
Berger.
saying you took your dog to Rec Park, okay? You're leaving to come home and you're gonna,
I could come home,
you can, no, you
I
can't.
could go there.
But
You
you
can
could
go
if you
there.
lived on Berger in that neighborhood back there. So you're,
Okay.
you, sorry, I forgot to tell you where you live. You turn on to Thornapple Drive.
You can't go
And then
there.
you turn on to Thornapple, you're on the road, and then you turn on to Thornapple Drive on that little, the scenic two-way that
Yeah.
people speak. You can then go that way just to get into the Berger neighborhood back there.
Okay,
Although in theory, you could also, why would you? Because you would cut through, but it doesn't matter. You could still do
so,
that.
so if I were going from my house where I live to the park,
You're
I
fine.
could go there,
mhm,
I just couldn't come home.
correct.
Yeah. And so there's gonna be some pushback. There's
Always good.
at least one member on the board who hates it because it's, used as a shortcut sometimes.
Yeah,
But then
it
the-
shouldn't be, that is such a scenic drive, and I feel so bad for those houses.
Oh,
And
there's, it's
so-
nonstop that,
And I use it, so I mean, I feel bad for them. when I use
That's a
it.
beautiful stretch.
it's a beautiful
and
stretch.
that
but
was
there's
this-
no other way to get any type of path for, there's no shoulder, there's no way to make a path.
And it's
Yeah.
so beautiful, and there's no reason we.
And you can still do it
Yeah.
50% of the time. So I kind of don't. And again, that other route, so you go by Goldfish, by Fire Station 1,
It's just as fast.
yes, and it's made to handle it's not at capacity anywhere near because everyone does the shortcut. You
That
could,
will all put everybody through the downtown
Mhm.
village.
yes,
Too, no matter what, I mean, it'll just increase as we get more of a walkable village, and
Uh-huh.
then we get more.
mhm. It would connect that entire neighborhood and then all those the houses that live along, or the people that live in those houses would be ecstatic.
Yeah, we've talked to people that live on that road, that section, people that do not, and they all have the same sentiment that they definitely are in favor of that.
Those would be the two major potential changes, I think. If it,
Yeah,
I mean,
even Old 28th has not been, of course, we haven't talked to the businesses. yet.
yeah, I'm curious about.
But
GT.
in general, there's a good feeling about creating a node there down Old 28th off of 28th Street. Not, and then closing it off at Cascade to create some sort of, that's where we had some of the residential back in there, some of the multi-use.
And then Cascade will kind of,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it.
So then if we've got so the form-based code, which you can have McKenna and Chris Corey do a presentation on that, because that really, when things are gonna turn for redevelopment, it'll encourage the right kind of redevelopment in the private sector. And then we've got the public spaces, but there aren't a lot of public spaces beyond that Tuffy and, kind of along the road. But then the middle area is the public-private partnership, or a little more of a gray area, and the space that comes up is the big giant parking lot with Chowhound and bowling, like that comes to mind. And we've had discussions, they would be open to, they've got more parking lot than they needed, and they would be amenable to having, township DDA dollars put into redoing that and having like some more public space updates, that kind of thing. But then the flip side is you have to, make sure that that there's a mutual benefit. Does that like? You,
Yeah, and that's not uncommon. I mean, there's through the placemaking efforts, that's a thing across the country about creating place. A lot of these shopping plazas or shopping malls that were they're overparked. I mean, the parking requirements are just used to be, ridiculous. So now we can scale back on that, and especially around these nodes where you have villages and downtowns and places that you want people to gather. It benefits the commercial business too, because it brings people to there and then they're gonna shop those tenants there. It's the same reason you do your classic car shows on Wednesdays, right? I see them lining up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they're there to spend the evening and visit the business there. So, you bring people and it works.
yeah, we just don't want to put all our eggs in that could be a very expensive renovation. And if we're looking, maybe there are other priority, I mean, that's a huge benefit to those property owners. But
Mhm.
we just have to be careful how we prioritize dollars.
That's
And-
always down the line, though.
That's what I
Yeah.
would say. I mean, I think the other stuff is higher priority.
Yeah,
well,
so,
that, and plus the reinvestment that they're doing, I mean, they're putting a whole new roof on that entire
Right.
complex right now.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a.
yeah, he actually
what
just
they
reached
have
out,
and-
yeah.
And looking at OHM's plan. Be like, yeah, that's.
He actually just reached out to us last week and we need to get a meeting with him. Cause he wants to sit down and look at the concept and look at what, some of the things we can do. Because, they're actually an equity firm that owns that. So, there's. That speaks, right? So who knows?
I would think
where-
they're in a
where
good
that could-
spot where they are.
Yeah,
You
Yeah,
know,
but
it-
even doing some improvements and creating something within that shopping plaza itself, and maybe we don't have any part of it as far as the public-private partnership. Maybe it's something that's private development that incorporates
Yeah.
a public space, because that's a thing too. So, we
Did-
definitely will meet with them.
Did OHM think we had enough like dispersed parking? Like I think at East Grand Rapids has a little parking ramp. Is that, 10 years, 20 years from now, do we need?
Yeah, there's a whole thing in the world of urban planning, which is parking is a perceived issue, actually not a real issue. So if people will find a place to park, but I do think that we have an opportunity to partner with either the church or the shopping plaza. We're gonna increase some parking at Tassel Park, although it doesn't look like it when you take the parking lot out, there actually ends up being more parking spots. So you create those parking spots throughout the downtown and they're not so segregated and into one area. They're kind of spread out. And then it's all about wayfinding and making sure that people understand how to get around the downtown.
and Old 28th Street. We could look at parallel roadside parking along that, whereas the road commission would not allow that in other main routes, but I think on Old 28th Street, they would.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's why going back to the RFQ, that's kind of step one. So all of these other things as we move through that, because that's our big investment and we've got Tuffy, we've got to deal with Tuffy. So getting those improvements. And then, we'll start seeing, what is the next phase? And once we get the costs and look at, how much we can actually carry as far as debt service goes from a DDA perspective, that'll then say, okay, here's phase two. Now, again, to your point, you may be talking 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road before the next phase comes along. But, that's why let's concentrate on the park improvements, the doctor's office and the Tuffy site.
And I should know this, but the DDA captures their money from commercial. And residential?
I'm gonna turn it over to Lorna to give the right answer. Yeah.
I think the reason I didn't know OHM was out is because at the very first meeting, they talked a lot about doing traffic studies and stuff to figure out how to calm down traffic. Did they
Yeah.
do all that? And I
So-
missed it?
Nope, you didn't. And I'm glad that, and I missed a really key part of this. They gave us a proposal to go into phase two, which incorporated all of the traffic. And I forgot, I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention this. It incorporated all of the traffic studies, the elevation and engineering studies for Tuffy. Because they have to do some elevations and to do the proper design, and then also to do the final design and architecture for phase two and for the project. It was almost $900,000.
Okay,
So I don't think that we are good stewards of taxpayer dollars if we don't go to the streets and say, hey, maybe we do end up going with OHM, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we've gone through the process that is fair and make sure that we can answer to the residents and the business owners who pay into the TIF, which then funds the DDA, to make sure like, yep, we went through the process and this is what was correct. So,
okay.
sorry,
That's what didn't know that
Yep.
they were done, 'cause I never saw it.
yeah, so I guess I was quick to say they were done because they could be done. But all of that, and then I've worked with Eric too, because some of the engineering and some of the traffic studies, the road commission actually can do that because they have in-house engineers and they actually already have some of the data. So that's the other part that Eric has been working on with the road commission. There's so many moving parts in all of this because you've got the road commission, MDOT, you've got the architects, designers, engineers, all of that. You've got the township, you've got the DDA, property owners.
We just hear.
No, and no, you're 100% right. And it completely set my mind to mention that.
Okay.
I would have loved nothing more than to say, yep, you're so familiar with the project, let's keep rolling, but.
I think the bridge will do a little calming too. I feel like it's already, I mean, obviously it's for the construction, but it's a little tighter.
I think I think it's great.
It's certainly working right now.
Yeah.
I think like talking about the traffic calming, I think we all have agreed at one point or the other, at least the majority, about we have to calm the traffic, right? The other thing that is a little concerning to me is if we're kind of talking about, all right, we may close off 28th Street and that, make it a turnaround that may have an impact on business and a couple other things that is there an outside expert, say you spend X thousands of dollars and they tell you that their expertise is traffic calming, flow of traffic. If you do this versus this, it's gonna be good. So like, if we want this master plan to come together, it allows us to engage those businesses and let them know that this is through the experts, what we think is gonna happen.
So part of the two biggest pieces of this RFQ, the one for the public park and riverfront design experience, and then the public roadway and streetscape improvement experience. In the public roadway, what we have in here is they need to give us examples, design, construction, public roadway improvements, specifically those incorporating road diets, on-street parking, traffic calming, aesthetic streetscape elements, gateway features, stormwater, intersection improvements, and signage and wayfinding elements. So all of that is.
Water's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I haven't connected.
We talked about your
We,
buildings today.
we went to your site the day after. We can chat afterwards, so. Yeah, that's interesting. So, yes, we have that written in here too, so where, and it's also written in a way, like, if their firm is the design firm and they're gonna sub it out, or they need to bring that to the table to say who they're gonna be working with that are the experts in the field, because not one firm can do all of that, which is also part of the reason we've started to peel some of that away and work in-house with the road commission itself. They are the experts on roads, so.
You know what I should send? You remember when we had the last OHM meeting and then Doug Lee from Jam and Bean had traffic ideas, Bridget, so he sent an email with like real detailed of his thoughts or proposals, and then our just in-house, our engineer kind of looked at it and had some just tentative responses about, you know, from the engineering standpoint. I'll send that to the DDA. It's just helpful.
One of the other things, if you guys haven't known, we haven't made it quite into the village area yet. Some of the focus was further to the east on Cascade Road, but the board has approved almost $100,000 a year for trees installations. And we worked with the road commission on putting trees in the right of ways. So if you head to east on Cascade Road, you'll see a lot of trees, and it's making a huge difference. And they say that trees calm traffic as well. So we didn't spend all the dollars for 2024. So Eric's, or 2025. So Eric's going back to work with the road commission on continuing that. So in the fall, we should see some more trees. Probably there's some in the village itself, but as you come out of the village, we're looking at putting some more in there too.
And that's from the improvements revolving fund that had been in there for years. With development, they have to hook up to sewer water. There's a fee. And so it sat there in account, but it was slated for to expand sewer and water to industrial development on the east side of the airport. So we cut that out, but the money's still sitting there. We're using it. That came from those dollars.
And then Lorna, if you could answer my question, I guess, as far as TIF money is coming from businesses, or is it also coming from residential?
When the DDA was formed and the boundaries, we looked at the taxable value of every property in those boundaries, regardless of use and whether it's personal or real property or commercial, residential. And then every year we look at the new taxable value, and the differential is what the DDA captures from any parcel within the border.
And the only reason I bring that up is that, again, as we take a look at OHM's plan or thoughts, and where Old 28th Street, there's probably a good dozen businesses there. If it was only capturing businesses, we would lose out those dollars if we're turning that into residential. And so I just want to make sure from not only, you know, and granted, then those would be taxable dollars that are hitting the township. So, I mean,
It's a good question.
just making sure that everybody
No,
is, you know, that those dollars are being
100%.
generated still within the township, but going in, I don't want to say in the right pot, but going in the right pot too.
And so Scott, it's hard to find, you have to have at least one, I believe, resident that lives within the DDA
Right.
district. So thankfully, there's some condos that.
Right.
We need you to stay put.
I survived the next vote, maybe.
Just to remind everybody too, it was in the the annual report from 2024, if you guys recall, it's on the website. The base of the DDA. No, this is an different. Anyway, we put the base back from 1993. Which that back then was $38 million, and in 2024, the taxable value was 116. So in the DDA, it looks like it's gone through some revisions over the years in 2003, 04, and then in 2021. So
So we're capturing on that 80 million differential.
yeah, that base, and then you collect on what's above it, correct?
But there's a few exceptions, right? So like schools, Forest Hills Public Schools we don't keep their share. There's probably a couple more.
Okay. I again, just kind of curious if we're gonna lose those dollars. Yeah, down the road, again, it could be 10, 15, 20 years, but just something to think about for the next generation that's coming.
So if there's any more questions on the next steps as far as that, let me know. If you think of any, even after tonight, shoot me an email. One of the biggest next steps, I kind of put together, in addition to those dates that I told you, once we award the contract, we'll put together a timeline for the rest of the activities, working with the consultant in regards to, when they'll be finalized with the final design approval process, construction process, and we'll put together this Gantt chart, if you will, real high level to move the project forward and then start managing to that timeline. One of the things that is going to be important to do during that, which is it'll work itself into the timeline, and this rolls right into Lorna being here, is the bonding process and how we're actually going to pay for all this. I know I mentioned this at the concept meeting or at maybe the previous DDA meeting, but it's not a complex process to go through, but there's a lot of steps to it. And so Lorna's here tonight to kind of walk us through what that will look like, and then what the DDA's role is, what staff's role is, and what the board's role is, because they all play a role in this, plus some consultants and attorneys. So I'll turn it over to Lorna. This is finance stuff that
You're inviting me. I have old fashioned paper to hand out. And while I'm handing out, I will make a note that you had mentioned, say 12 businesses or so, if those were taken down and
Right.
residential were put in. That year that those businesses were taken down and taxable value went down, that will be less dollars that are available for capture.
Right, because then we would have a new base, right? We'd have a new base once.
Will change. The point is, you don't tear down residential and have brand new in the space of 7 months.
Yeah, so the base of when it was established will
Right.
never change,
Okay,
because any growth within the entire district. So the base is looked at as a whole. But I think what Lorna's saying is, if, let's say, we tore down a building that was bringing in $20,000 of taxes or revenue for the DDA and it was gone, when you demolish it, that tax gets set back to just what the land is worth. So you tax on less. So you would actually have a year before something new was built. Tuffy's a prime example. When the township bought it, that came off the tax rolls.
Mhm.
So there was no more revenue generated from that site. Beforehand, that business was producing revenue for the DDA. This is a little bit different because the township purchased it, but it did take it off the rolls. But if they would have ended up demolishing it themselves, it's same concept.
How does it work with Tuffy? Because for the 4 or 5 years that we bought it, we owned it, but we were landlords to Tuffy.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the agreement, but I don't think that the income, the revenue went away. I'm almost positive.
They did have a personal property
Oh,
tax bill. And they did pay that. Yes, because they still had equipment. So, oh yeah. Okay, yeah, so I think you all have handouts. Make sure township manager has one. So bond basics. Think of a bond as an IOU. Some folks think of a bond as a mortgage. Really, it's more just an IOU, a piece of paper that we promise to pay back Technically, a bond is a series of IOUs. And again, that differentiates it from a mortgage. The main piece of this first page is an example. This is not a DDA bond or a DDA example. This happens to come from the fire station. And it shows that we talk about the fire bond being a 20-year bond. It's actually a series of 20 bonds that are laddered out. And those bonds are sold to individual investors in normally $5,000 pieces. So an investor could buy a 5-year bond for the fire station. And if you look at the maturity, it's going to show the interest rate that that specific bond will earn. And that interest rate can be different from the next year's bonds. So again, on this first page, you see the third column says coupon. Every year is different or could be different. Now, the bond experts put this all in great computers and come up with a net interest or an average interest cost. And that's the interest that's normally quoted. So if somebody asks, gee, what are bond interests? What's a 20-year bond going for now? You can say, well, it's at 5.2%. The first year you may, if you want to purchase that, you may only have an interest rate or a coupon of 1.2%. If you purchase the 20-year bond, it may be at a 6 or a 7%, but the average over the life of the 20 years is going to be that 5.2. And again, that's another way that a bond is different from a mortgage.
So in this example, the maturity, if I was to purchase a 5-year bond on
Mhm.
November 1st of 2023. And so that would become to maturity in 2028. My yield would be at 2.4%. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's considered a municipal bond?
Yes, this
So
is all
that's
municipal
exempt
bond.
of federal taxes.
We can talk about taxes.
And so is there a company that does that for us to sell this to the public?
We're gonna talk
Oh,
all
okay.
about that process, yep. But this is what a bond looks like. When you talk about the average interest rate, it's a series that you're gonna be averaged. Say it's a series of IOUs. The investor will receive regular interest payments. They'll receive their principal payment on maturity. So every 6 months, the township, the DDA, will make an interest payment. On the opposite 6 months, we'll make an interest payment and we'll pay principal also. Thanks, Jade. Okay, so that's what the first page was. If you flip over, we have a landscape, our second page. These are details using the DDA's numbers. And I called on MFCI, a financial advisor, last, well, this is dated August 6th. And they ran some numbers for us. You see that there's an estimated TIC, that's a true interest cost. And so that's your interest rate. And this was looking at a potential 20-year bond. There are 3 big boxes. Those are that's one concept with either the interest rate of 3.563%, which was what the interest rates were in August of last year. The middle box is the interest rate of 3.56 plus add 0.2% just to show things going up. The column on the right or the box on the right, the financing is the same, but the nature of the DDA would change. And that's showing that this has a 1.5% growth rate in your taxable base. So the first two are saying if no further development happened, and we are gonna pay for this for 20 years with the revenue that we're receiving currently. Those are the first two columns. What do things look like? The third column is letting our revenue grow, which really is more realistic. From these big boxes, the first two you can see for the estimated total debt service. We try to keep those numbers flat, very similar. And that's a little akin to you going in to buy a car and you start talking about the total price. And the salesperson wants to talk about, well, what can you afford? What's your monthly? These first two columns, this keeps our annual payments level. The third, the payments rise. What's good, what's bad? They're just two different ways of looking at it. This was modeling last August, just to do a what if. It shows that, and these numbers, the total debt service, that was based on what we can afford right now. So based on what we could afford right now, we could make almost just shy of a $1.2 million debt service payment. And what that 1.2 debt service payment would get us is a project that's $16.97 million. That's the bottom bold in the first box. So that's what we could afford at an interest rate of 3.5%. Good, bad, that's what it is. If you flip the page, let's talk about the whole process.
Oh, one quick question.
Do please.
When you do like a bond thing, is it, there's like a minimum for it? So we do one big thing for the park and then phase two is maybe smaller. Is it flexible and
There are timing issues. The IRS gets involved. And when we receive bond dollars, they say we have to spend it within 3 years.
But let's say, to your point, that the park is only gonna take us 12 months. And we know that there's a sticker price of $8 million for that. You can do the bond language to accommodate and account for other projects as long as it happens within those 3 years. It's all about the language you use to write the bonds, because the investors have to be comfortable with what you have in there as far as language goes.
Got it.
So for instance, if you wanted to throw in, you could do one projects with bond dollars, right? So let's say the township wanted to be, 50% contributor to the road project of making Thornapple River Drive one way. As long as that's in our language, it's an approved expenditure.
Got it.
Yeah. Good question, though.
Okay. So I mentioned the bond issuance process. It's a team effort. There are many players. Go through the process step by step. Right now, we're in capital planning. You're identifying, defining the project. You hired OHM to give you the concept. You're talking about how do we go forward? So we're right in that sweet spot of capital planning. When we are sure of what we want to do, and we are sure we want to issue bonds, this board and the township board will be involved. Because when the actions that this board takes affects the credit of the township as a whole. And townships, any municipal entity have debt limitations. There's a limit of how much debt you can issue, and the DDA debt burden is part of the township-wide debt burden. So the township board will be involved. Then we have a couple experts involved, and this is into the hire the experts. The first one we'll look at is a bond counsel. And they're lawyers, they ensure legal compliance, they look out for the law. Their work results in two opinions. The first is that the transaction legally commits the DDA or the township to pay. Because investors don't want to look at this piece of paper, IOU, and then if something goes south in 5 years and we don't pay, the investors find out that, well, you know, this IOU wasn't really legally, it wasn't a contract, that's bad. So sorry for being a little colloquial there. So the first one is that the transaction legally commits us. The second one talks about the taxability of the interest. Our bond counsel determines if the interest is or is not taxable. We don't pay taxes. This is not for our benefit, or it doesn't affect us. It certainly affects the investors,
So taxable on the federal level or the state level?
both. Their
So
opinion.
my
their-
understanding was municipals, for the most part. Well, maybe I'm messing it up, but aren't taxable on the federal level, but are on the state level? Or why should there be any difference in that?
The structure of the bond may make it a taxable structure. It also may make it a non-tax.
So it's more appealing to
both
investors
federal-
if it's non-taxable, I would think.
Correct. Non-taxable will probably have a lower interest rate. Yeah, because.
Which makes
you-
sense. Yeah.
There you go. And it may be non-taxable also on the Michigan level. Again, that is for bond counsel to determine. And they determine that based on the structure that we present to them.
Do we, what's more appealing for us? I mean, do we? Lower interest rate. We want to,
Yep, we would pay a lower interest rate if it's non-taxable. And, you know, right now, I can't see a great reason to go out with a taxable issue. For this project. I will say though, on the municipal level, there are times where, gee, you'd really like to issue it as a non-taxable. But the nature of what you're doing, say, you're refinancing within 8 years. Or pension bonds. If you issue a bond to set money aside in a pension fund, those can be taxable. But our project should be non-taxable. And the next excerpt we talk about, we'll work on that too. Okay, so bond counsel, they have two opinions. That it's a legal transaction, that we're on the hook. And the nature of the taxability, that the interest is or isn't. How to select, there are lots of bond counsel out there. So we would do an RFP, an RFQ, an RFI, request for proposal or information or quotes. The same way Jade is saying that we're not gonna look just at dollars. We're gonna look at the quality and the service we get. I've listed a couple of names just to say there's lots out there. And the bond counsel would be paid through bond proceeds. So the DDA would not write a separate check to bond counsel. They'll take a cut right from the 16 to 19 million we're looking at potentially. Next, we have the financial advisor. These folks, they work for us. Recall, bond counsel, they look out for the law. The financial advisor, they look out for us. They have to be SEC and MSRB, Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, registered. That means there's professional competency. They are required to have a fiduciary relationship. So all they're doing is looking out for our best interests. They have a duty of loyalty to us. Again, we would go through an RFP, RFQ, RFI. There are many financial advisors out there. Again, we want to be transparent, open solicitation. A couple names, Benzinski, MFCI, PFM, all great companies. I know we're gonna get great service. And these folks are also paid through the bond proceeds. Plus, they could do work for us on an annual basis. So there'd be a small annual fee that the DDA would write a check annually. And we're talking in the $2,000 range, $2,500 range for some compliance reporting.
Just a quick question, when it comes to those fees, is that percentage based fee for the law firm that's doing that? Or is it a flat fee that's then taken out from the bond?
I typically see bond counsel fees as a flat fee,
Okay. Not a percentage of the total.
not a percentage, no. And the financial advisor also, I believe that'd be a flat fee. It's certainly up for negotiation though.
Understood.
Okay. Another professional we would hire is the ratings agency. That's Standard and Poor's and Moody's, and Moody's was just in the news, and the US was just in the news a couple days ago because they downgraded the federal government. So the rating agency measures our ability to repay. So they look out for the investors. So you see where I'm going with all these,
Yeah.
our team
Yeah,
that have different.
that relates to how much interest we have to pay.
There you go. And everybody's looking out for a different piece, a different interest. Ratings agencies, they're gonna provide an independent opinion. Hey, we're currently AAA. The township is rated higher than the federal government. Last time I checked, which I gotta say, it's been a good year and a half. There are only 8 or 9 municipalities in the state of Michigan that are AAA rated. So this is a big deal that we are AAA rated. And it's not just the township and the township government, but they look at our residents and our housing stock and the nature of the resiliency of our area. So can't get better than a AAA. And again, with the ratings agency, we can go through an RFP, RFI, RFQ. There are only 4 big ones. We have been rated in the past by S&P. So that may point to, well, we might as well stay with them because they've already started a file, so we don't have to start from scratch. And we would pay for that directly. We flip the page. The last team member would have is the underwriter. This underwriter, they would purchase our bonds for resale. They look out for themselves. They're say Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Baird can be underwriters. These are the folks, they're gonna buy our IOU. One company is gonna buy our whole bond IOU, and that company is gonna market them to their individual investors. And so if you have a relationship with, you have your own stockbroker or financial advisor at Raymond James or Merrill Lynch, and they may build your portfolio and they may buy a piece of the DDA bond for your own portfolio. But the township will make one sale of the whole bond issue. Let's see, and if they buy them and they can't sell them, that's, they buy and hold. We're still gonna pay interest. We're gonna pay it to them. Okay. So then we have our team assembled. So then we're gonna structure the bonds. And this is where our financial advisor, the team that looks out for us, that's what they are here for. They are going to understand that, oh, we have a phase 1. Well, when is phase 2? They are going to help work with us to structure the bond, to figure out the dollar amount needed, when we need it, How long, are we looking at a 10-year bond, a 15-year bond? A 20 or a 30-year? The financial advisor will help us work through what's best for us. They'll look at the type of bond, and we'll talk about type of bonds more on the next page. Competitive versus negotiated, again, next page. And even callable versus callable versus non. Once we have the bond structure, we're gonna go around to selling the bonds. And before we sell the bonds, we have to prepare a preliminary and final official statement. That's about a 100-page document. That this document, I'm saying paper, it normally comes on a, who knows, used to be floppy, now it's a flash drive, huh? All the details, that is the legal document that we can put on the street. That our underwriter will offer and show to everybody and say, this is our bond. Here are the details. I'm dwelling on it because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. A competitive sale is we would structure the bond, say on page 1 or 2. We would tell the street, hey, this is what we are offering. Tell us how much you'll pay us for it. What interest rate do we need to pay you for you to take our bond, to buy our bond? That is, say, that's the competitive. We set the dates, we set the amounts. Bidders offer their best sealed bid. We get in a room, open them all at once. It's maximum transparency. It's good for straightforward deals. And I could see us going with a competitive sale because we are AAA and it's very straightforward. We don't need to do much explaining. As right off the bat, we're gonna say, well, we're AAA. And that gets us a lot of leeway. Okay.
Who's we as far as opening bids?
I'm sorry, that would be a township representative and our financial advisor.
So in theory, you could do like along with,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
It would
sure.
probably be Lorna and Wendy.
No.
just, I'm thinking fire station 1 bond process. We approved it and then at the board level, I don't think we saw anything.
The day of the sale, I mean, it's a big deal. The day of the sale, so usually
Mhm.
finance people, that's a good day for them.
Oh, yeah, that's
And they
exciting.
always announce the rates and the.
Oh, yeah.
How the
Oh,
process
well, it's
went,
probably because we didn't have any finance people back then at the township.
probably not.
It was just a regular old day.
So I have a follow-up question to that. Are there any, and if this got addressed already, I apologize for
No.
retarding this. Does Cascade as a township, do we have any outstanding bonds, and if so, for what amounts?
It's the same thing.
Oh, we certainly do have outstanding bonds. They are listed on our website under the financial, for financial transparency. Because up until this year, there was a state law that said we had to post them. Cascade is very, very low debt. We have 4 outstanding bonds. One is a DDA bond because the DDA borrowed money to buy out the Tuffy lease. And so there are 4 or 5 years left on that bond.
Oh, was that to purchase initially to purchase Tuffy?
We did a cash pile.
Because we
Yeah.
did, when we bought out the lease, we didn't
This
bond it.
dates back years, but yeah, when.
I'm
the-
sorry,
when the-
oh, not buying the lease, I'm sorry, it was,
Oh, you're
it
fine.
was
So-
purchasing the property.
Purchasing that property, not buying
Yes.
out the business.
Okay.
That was cash.
Yes, if you look at
What about
debt
all the-
service
so that-
report right there.
Is there only one DDA bond? What about the road work that was done? What would that have been?
So we have debt on, there's a DDA bond, there's an open space bond, which that'll be paid off in a couple of years. That was for Burton Park. Fire Station 1, and then there's a brownfield that was done a couple of years ago.
We had to bond out for that for the brownfield process.
It's only $336,000.
That was a loan,
Okay.
that was a loan through the state of Michigan,
Okay,
but we still disclose it as long-term debt.
got it.
Yes. And that loan from the state of Michigan is paid through the capture of taxes. So,
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that one. It's on our debt service page, but it's actually not up on it, so disregard that.
it's counted as a bond though, it's just a different version of it, it's long-term debt. So Cascade is a very low debt level. That's our total debt, just those 4 issues. And 2 of them are paid off in the next 5 or 6 years. Yeah, so we are incredibly low debt. So let's go back to number 5, when we're selling the bonds. We could also, if we don't do a competitive sale, we can do a negotiated sale. And this is where the finance folks have even more fun. And it's very stressful. That we would pre-select an underwriter. So we would do, again, an RFP, RFI, RFQ. To find an underwriter. And we would sit. And well, I've done this in downtown Milwaukee and RW Baird. We'd sit on their trading floor with all their traders. And they would talk to their market, their investors, and say, you know, Cascade DDA needs $15 million. And if we wanted $2 million to mature in 6 years, you markets, individuals, what interest rate would we need to pay you for you to be interested in buying our $2 million of debt that matures in 6 years? And that's done for every year of a 20-year maturity. And say one investor will say, you know what? For $2 million in 6 years, I need 5%. Another investor would say, you know what, for that same 2 million, I'd take 4.5%. And for every year of that 20-year, they would go through that process. They would talk to individual investors, but the consensus would form that, well, you know what, for this year, if you set a 4.5% interest rate, 90% of that issue will be bought. Now, the broker, the underwriter, would have to hold on to that other 10%. But they think, yeah, we can sell in the next week or 2. And so interest rates and the structure, like, you know what, if we say, gee, let's start out with a $2 million maturity in 6 years. If that doesn't get a great reception, well, you know what, that says that folks really aren't interested in a 6-year maturity. Let's back off and say we have to have a 6-year maturity. So let's make that year $1 million year. And let's make that other million, bring it out into the 8 and 9 year. So it is a lot of back and forth. And
So to me, that sounds like, from a home market standpoint, it sounds like a variable rate in the sense that every year you can go in there and you're gonna get 3.5% this year, you may get 2.5% the next year, you could get 4%. It's just gonna, and so from a municipal, and again, I'm a conservative person, so I'd like to have structure. I want to know what's it gonna be every year for us to be able to pay this debt off as compared to this year I win, next year I lose.
at the end, this starts at 9 in the morning. By 5 in the afternoon, that whole structure is solid and mapped.
For the 20 years.
for the 20
Oh,
years.
so it's not
Yes.
every year you're
It's-
going back and
no.
doing this process?
We do that once. We sit
Oh,
and,
okay.
and
I
hammer this out once.
misunderstood you. I'm like-
So we are, it
Okay.
is,
But do you have to accept it?
we don't.
You can say, no, I don't want this because this other company will do that fixed at whatever.
Boy, once you go down the route of a negotiated sale,
You gotta pick some.
boy, I haven't seen or heard of anybody backing out or changing. Not saying it can't happen, and I haven't said, but you know, we'll certainly have a lot of questions and dialogue. I will take that back to friends. But I say friends because we haven't engaged anybody on this. But I will find out if we go down the negotiated, if we can switch.
I kind of understand the process and I know it's done every day with communities and so forth, but by the time that we as a board have to vote on it. It will be well vetted by then and you guys will give us the advice, like, you know, we have to vote on it, but you will give us, like, you've looked into it a ton. And, you know, we're common people and you guys are, you know, well versed in this, but, it seems like a pretty big decision for us to vote yay or nay.
The resolution that the DDA board and the township board will be asked to approve will have a not to exceed interest rate. So if you approve issuing bonds, 20-year term, $17 million at a not to exceed 7.5%. That's all we need. As long as we come under that, we don't even need to come back to you.
And there's a lot that happens before that resolution gets written. All of those consultants, all the parties that need to be brought on board, that's all done before the resolution comes to you. Because, I mean, no disrespect to Lorna, but the two of us, we're not qualified to sit here and say, oh yeah, we're gonna go do this ourselves. That's not how it works. That's why you need all of those people that are experts in bonds.
But I feel like it's probably gonna be pretty straightforward. If you have a AAA rating, we're gonna have probably the most favorable path. For us to call X, Y, and Z. All of these options are probably in place because there's varying degrees of ratings. And you have to exercise other options to accomplish your goal. Is that a fair statement? If I'm
Absolutely.
reading in between the lines?
Absolutely,
Okay.
and our financial advisor will guide us towards the best path. And I'm gonna press them on, why is this the best path?
Is
So you will understand why this is the way to go.
So it feels like it's gonna be something that's non-callable, all of these things that just keeps it very stable for us.
Do they take into
Not all
account,
communities have that luxury,
Yeah.
for
Do-
sure.
do they
Lorna and
take
I
in-
work for
oh,
both
sorry.
of them.
do they take into account the structure? Like if, let's say we do 10 million for the park, but it takes a year and a half or 2 years to complete. We get all the money up front, so we're sitting on idle money, or is it like more like? Can we invest it in the meantime? Or yeah. or-
We're getting to that.
Oh.
Thank you for leading right into it. Wow. That's the spend and build, number 6. When we issue a bond, we're gonna say what we need, what we're gonna spend it on. And those funds are restricted to that project only. So it's so that's why our financial advisor and even our bond counsel will listen into what we want to do and make sure that it's recorded in the bond document correctly. The IRS says once we receive money, we have 3 years to spend it. The IRS also says we can't make too much interest on those dollars while we're sitting on it. And if anybody has any free time and likes getting into fraud and background, you can Google this Robert Citron, who is the Orange County, California treasurer back in the mid-90s. He figured out that because Orange County had a lot of money and they had a great bond rating, he figured out that he could issue hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds and pay a really low interest rate, get all those bond proceeds and invest the money and make all kinds of money.
For who?
For the county, it was all very, he had great intent. And two of his best, investment pickers were his psychic and his astrologer,
They actually did well.
until they didn't. And the county went bankrupt, had to declare bankruptcy, and he went to prison. I mean, it was a loss in the mid billions, I think $1.5 billion of losses.
Was he having the board or whoever the council approve the bonds?
Yes,
How did
and lots
that-
of board members got in trouble too. Because they had no idea.
Sure, that sounds like a theory.
We don't want trouble.
This is back to the day of the Psychic Friends Network. Dionne Warwick.
There you go, one was even a mail, literally a mail order. So after that, the IRS cracked down
It's too bad.
and arbitrage, which is,
So bottom line, we have to spend it within 3 years.
3
We
years.
can only get so much interest on that within that
That's
3
right.
years. Okay, that's the bottom line.
Yep.
So it'd be
And-
very helpful to be very specific with our bonds and do them in specific pieces that.
So we have to make decisions efficiently.
Is
Right.
it the kind of thing, do we write it in such a way where you try to put everything in, but you're not penalized if you don't get everything done?
That's,
It's a
well, you have
balance,
to be
right?
careful, but you can write it in a way that's a little bit broad. Some of it, so you want to make sure that you write it so you can actually complete your projects, but there are things that if you don't complete them. From my experience,
You won't be penalized.
right, because if you don't put it in there and you want to spend it on it, you
Can't do
can't.
Who helps write those?
All of those experts.
Bond counsel and
Bond counsel.
financial advisor.
Would they need to consult directly with the company that the engineer design, that kind of, or do they have enough from that plan they can?
They'll work with staff on that.
Okay.
After the IRS wrote these rules, they also developed a program, US Treasury developed a program, the slugs. State and local government series. And that's where our advisors write to the Secretary of the Treasury, say, we're gonna issue a $17 million bond. And actually, we issued a $17 million bond 2 days ago. Our net interest rate is a 4.8%. They will sell us securities. That goes up to 4.79%. So they are going to keep us out of trouble. These securities are designed for us, for every municipal issuer. They would get their own slug. Now, that's not like a treasury bill. We can't go out and sell those on the open market. The only thing we can do is turn them back into the treasury and get our, and make our interest. And these slugs are part of the toolkit that the federal government uses to manage their debt. So if you hear on the news and talk about, well, debt ceiling and Treasury is gonna take extraordinary measures, one of the first things they do is cut off the slugs. Used to not be a big deal until you flip the page and see that slug window has been closed in 16 different times in the last 30 years. So if we issue a bond and we need a slug, and they're in a period that we can't get one, we have to jump through more hoops. Or it again, just getting in the weeds and finance, that we're talking about bonding in maybe a year or so. So I won't worry about the debt limit that's coming up in June. I will worry about if there's another debt limit coming up next June. That's all, just wanted to bring up this kind of what's going on. Let's see. Yeah, so hey, number 7, we repay over time. That's using our pledged revenues. And then number 8, we may have issued the bonds, but we've got lots of tracking and reporting to do. There is annual reporting. We have to comply with bond covenants. And we make disclosures to the SEC, the Municipal Security Rulemaking Board, MSRB. And that's a big deal. So you've got me here and the financial advisor. That, in fact, last year, I didn't know that we had worked with MFCI. I did the filing on my own because with our low debt load, it wasn't bad. And I received a phone call from the financial advisor on June 28th. Hey, Lauren, didn't know you were at Cascade, but great you're there. You know, you have reporting due, right? So they're looking out for us. They're there. Let's see, what else? Your role as a board member? Know what's going on? Getting back to the supervisor's point of who knew what was going on in Orange County. Boards approved every bond resolution that the treasurer put in front of them. They had no idea why they were issuing hundreds of $millions of bonds. They just smiled and nodded and voted yes. So the fact that you're here tonight, listening to this, means that you're up to speed. You know what's going on. We'll try to keep you that way. And because folks have probably interested in what the market looks like today. They're very small, but I did 2 just quick cut and pastes. The first one is a $57 million bond issue for New Hampshire. And they were at a 5% coupon. The market required a 5.131%. So they had to sell it at a discount. And the bottom one, this was the state of California, has a $13 million bond. And that's a 5.297. With I believe that was a 20-year maturity. And there's one website way at the bottom, this emma.msrb.org. In case you want to get into the weeds, you can see every municipal issue in the country going back. Boy, I know you can go back at least 30 years. I haven't had reason to go back further, but interesting stuff if you're a numbers geek. Okay. More questions?
Yeah, so as we take a look at potential bond, again, we're looking at a bond primarily just for the Tassel Park aspect of things, correct?
So there's a
So
lot
that
more
has to be used in 3 years.
Yeah, there's a lot more discussion to be had between now and the time that we issue the bonds, because I think it's premature to answer that because we don't know how much the park project's gonna be in relation to how much we actually can bond out. And then also talking with the road commission to see if there's actually any road projects that could be done within those 3 years. I'll let Lorna chime in on this, but if we know we're gonna have 2 projects that could fall within the 3 years, I don't know that we want to go through the process twice. If we know we're gonna do this other project in 24 months. So because like Lorna said, we won't issue these bonds until 2026, probably. So we still have a long way to go before we get there. So there could be a lot that happens. But in reality, if we know we're only doing the park and we are not getting success with any sort of road transformations or anything else in the village, then yeah, we would just do the park. And then knowing that we have additional debt service that we can carry, and we could go through the process again in a few years.
And would we automatically look at a 20-year, or there's different terms, 10-year, 8-year, whatever the case may be? Just to try to, I mean, again, being a conservative individual, I want my loans paid off as quickly as I can. And is there a penalty if that loan is paid off quicker than the maturity date.
Loans, another differentiation between a municipal bond and a mortgage. Unless we say, when we issue them, that these bonds are callable, that we can pay them off early, we can't.
So there's
So when
really,
we say penalty or not, it's right up front, we have to.
How do you know if you can say that? That's a finance question. I'm just not sure of. How can you tell in advance if they're gonna be callable or not? You just anticipate a whole bunch of
Oh,
revenue coming up?
we set those terms, we say.
Could be
When
the structure,
when
right?
we look at issuing, say, and bonds. I believe it may be an IRS, a taxability rule, that bonds can't be called for the first 10 years.
Okay.
And then after that, we would say whether we're going to make them callable or not. Because it may be that, in 10 years, the DDA thinks they're gonna get a whole bunch of money and they can pay them off. We would disclose that up front, and probably investors would require a premium.
Right.
Because if they think they're buying a 20-year investment, it's gonna be bought out from under them early, they want an extra kicker.
so there's a lot of controls in place that keep us safe, but our biggest risk is keeping it on time, within that time frame, and then on budget, basically, right?
I see.
And if you have a lot of flexibility in it, maybe we make them callable, that we could pay them earlier if we think we have that flexibility in what the project is.
I think as a DDA, we have a decision of how much debt load do we want to take on, meaning like what your yearly payment's going to be to service the debt. And then what type of ceiling or projected ceiling we want in terms of a usable budget every year. So I think that generates a decision of like how much you can do in the bond. So seeing that will either say, oh my gosh, I can afford that X, Y, and Z, or this is our budget. We have to be a little tighter. And that I don't have my head fully wrapped around yet.
And is this potential bond just a DDA bond, or is this a DDA / township bond? Or that's an option?
The township board must approve all DDA bond action.
But to Scott's point, as far as who, I don't want to say, who's on the hook?
Thank you. Yes,
to
I was
pay?
going to.
Is it just DDA
Yes.
board that is gonna be paying, or the
Thank you.
DDA
Yep.
that'll be paying? Or
So-
is it in joint with the township that 60-40, 50-50, whatever the case may be? Whose budget are the monies coming out of?
Sure. And that gets it, and that I did cut it out of the presentation. These bonds will be issued as a revenue bond, meaning the revenues that the DDA gets in for the TIF, that taxable value.
Mhm.
Those are the revenues that are pledged to repay the bond.
That's the collateral. Like,
But it's not collateral.
well, I mean,
Again,
Yeah, I
drawing
know
the
it's-
difference with the mortgage. The only, yeah, let's call it collateral.
it's.
But again, it's
proof
gonna
of-
come
yeah.
out of the DDA budget. The
Yes.
100% of paying back the
100%.
bond is gonna come out of the DDA.
But if, in the township still has to pledge its full faith in
But that's
Right.
like there,
There's township backing.
the town, yeah.
that's whereas if the DDA were to fault or like default, the township has to come
No,
behind it.
no.
Huh.
No.
I will confirm that.
Huh.
Serious vote.
Yeah.
So, and so when we get to, just to go back to one of the first charts that she went over. The debt, the 16 million, 16 million and 19 million page. Those were run, those numbers were run last year on an acceptable debt service. That would not overextend the DDA, looking at its revenue. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go that high. I'm just saying that those were real numbers using our real revenue numbers.
And I think for me, just at a very basic level to understand it, I was saying, okay, if we took on, say, $10 million of a bond, right? And then we had to service that bond, what would our budget look like projected out over that time?
Oh, we'll run
Meaning,
that.
like, for instance, what if what we take in does not change? We don't see a 1% increase every year, wherever it's stagnant. What does that look like? And then I think that's gonna, frame up the risk of, I don't wanna see us get so tied up in servicing debt that
Yep.
we can't pivot and service the DDA with some other needs.
Yep, no, 100%, and I think that would be a forecasting, a process that we would
Yeah.
go through. Very similar to the millage that we asked the residents to pay, we could use formulas to kind of, to plug in that debt service. Look at our expenses, write in, let's say revenue stays flat, 3% increase in expenses. And we could forecast that out 10 years, I wouldn't want to go any further than that, because then it's already inaccurate after year one
Yeah.
anyway. But, you do that and then you say, okay, yep, we're really comfortable with that kind of debt service.
Cause I think seeing it that way, it may not seem as daunting, but like that's a very easy way to service debt, take care of the DDA needs and to propel an amazing project forward.
Right.
Yep,
And
have
remember
cushion for
our-
if a property comes up or whatever other type of thing.
Correct, or if we sit, unfortunately, in a downturn in the economy and there's some things outside of our control with the DDA. That we have room to be fiscally responsible.
And remember, we're gonna have a financial advisor.
But,
All they do is look out for us. And they do this for a living. So they know the pitfalls. They are not gonna let us overextend.
And I think, it's interesting as we sit here and talk about this, because I would not feel comfortable a year ago saying this is the right course of action, this is the right way to go, because I didn't have that history on the previous expenses and how the DDA was allocating their dollars. And I think we've done a lot of growth in the last year and a half, understanding what the DDA is supposed to do, what our true revenue is, what our true exposure should be as far as expenses go. We've looked at the transportation, and the DDA was spending $500,000 on transportation a year, which. I mean, that right there was years and years and years of, it's debatable whether it was money well spent or not, but it's just, we've made some changes to our budget to right size the budget to make sure that when we look at this, we can feel good about our numbers too. Yeah, but yes, the financial advisor is key in this, because they do this every day, so.
Lorna, do you know the state law? This might be more of the assessing department or treasurer directly, that big box stores are actually pay less in property tax because there's some state law where they're not assessed at the, do you know what I'm talking about?
The big box.
Yeah, they're assessed at some other
Stores.
property value, so in the, where you think the money is coming from like local business owners or smaller business owners, they're not paying their as much, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. That is an assessing, in the assessing world. And say for an example, there's a Walmart that's been there 35 years. And they build a new Walmart down the street, move. And then they sell or market their old structure. And they write a covenant in that it can't be used for another big box store. And then while they're sitting on it, they go to the township and say, well, you can't assess this as a big box store because we just said it can never be a big box store.
Even if it's used as, like, basically, they're not assessed at their, maybe what their actual value is right now.
That's what the township would say, yes. And that's not just a township, that is statewide.
It's statewide, the big box stores have some,
And I know there's legislation trying to nail down what an empty big box store should be assessed.
that's one of the things that killed me about not only that, but with the bus, when you're paying for the beneficiaries were Meyer and Walmart primarily, and those big box stores already are getting a huge break in what they're
And-
paying
and they're
for
the
property
first-
taxes.
And they're the first ones to line up for MTT.
Well, and then Walmart sent that one guy to talk about how there was one employee that had special needs about Walmart, that was during COVID, when they were the only like large business that posted a profit for that quarter, and they're gonna come ask their local DDA to give this guy transportation when it's literally Walmart. Like, it was just like the most hypocritical. And when you think about the purpose of a DDA, it still irks me. It doesn't irk me, but it was just like, took so long to get the ship pointed in the right direction. But it's just funny because Walmart and Meijer,
So just a quick follow-up, when you said when Walmart moves to the new locations, that. I understand like property taxes, obviously they were in that location for 35 years, so because there was no sale or capital improvements that took place, the value probably stayed okay, but. If you build a $20 million new center, wouldn't that be assessed at a higher rate?
it's supposed to be, but it's not. There's some loop with lobbyists at the state level with big box stores that they're not assessed at their current property value, whereas other smaller businesses and residential and that kind of stuff is.
How
I
could
don't
we
know.
all do that with residential real estate?
Yeah.
We'd all love that.
We don't have lobbyists,
Then,
but it's
Think-
relevant when you're looking at DDA
sure.
priorities and why DDAs
Okay.
were created in the first place was
Yeah.
because the change in the big box stores and expressways kind of
So the
drained traditional downtown. to begin
EDA
with.
doesn't have superseding authority over the state legislation?
Nope.
No.
No, that would be awesome.
That's, I hope that was.
We're low on the totem. I don't think there's anyone lower.
So if you guys get home and you have more questions, I know that's a lot to take in. I mean, bonding is a very complex process. So as you think of more questions, again, shoot us some emails. I'll make sure and get it.
Very educational, Laura.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah,
laid
it was
out.
great. It was awesome.
Really good.
I just, I respect the seriousness of the decision though.
But
Yeah,
it's-
this is very good, Lauren. Thank you.
And it was
We keep the eyes wide
easy
open.
to understand and.
Oh my gosh,
For lack
thank
of a
you.
better word, dumbed down to my
Yeah.
level. which is really Nice.
Understand it.
Yeah.
Bonding for dummies, okay.
Oh,
All right,
thank
if
you.
there's nothing else on the bonding process, can we move on to Article 7?
Yes,
Staff updates.
yes.
I've used
and
all my
this-
brain
this-
power already, but we'll
Yes,
do it.
I
We'll
know.
do it. We got this.
This is pretty quick. I should be done in 5 minutes. So I'm happy to announce that Friendship Park, which the DDA had a significant role in helping fund some of the improvements there. We are gonna hold our first concert series this summer. We're kind of kicking it off, kicking the tires, seeing how it's gonna
Yeah.
work. So you'll see some promotions, a promotional piece out now. June 12th, July 17th, and August 2nd, 6:30 at Friendship Park at the Pavilion. It's free for families. Come on out. We're looking, I don't know if we're gonna have food trucks, but there's lots of ideas swarming about how we can make it even better, even though we haven't even kicked off the first one. There's a lot of new blood at the township in the last year, including our program coordinator. So I think you're gonna see some fun stuff come up and so invite everybody to come out.
Do you have a sponsor for it?
They were working on one and I don't know if they,
If not, I know someone probably who would for you guys.
Okay.
Without flinching.
I will put, have you met Dan?
I don't know if I have.
I will get with, I'm gonna loop in on,
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Initially, I was supposed to have, Jessica was doing some legwork on the flower pots and a new contract with Harder and Warner for this year. In the past, the DDA has never done anything to do anything in the spring, and it seems like at the end of each season, they get very ugly. There's just, the transition is horrible. We're gonna bring that in-house. Dan feels very confident that he can do that with the staff that he has and the knowledge that he has and the certification. So you should start, we're gonna make sure that they're always blooming well, not in the winter, but there'll be proper decorations in the winter. But as opposed to contracting that out, we're actually gonna bring that back in-house. Janine, who is a part-time employee that works for Dan, she's taken the lead on it, working with Dan and Sydney. So look for those improvements to be here soon. Cause like, for instance, this spring, we didn't have a contract with Harder and Warner to do spring flowers. We still had Christmas stuff up or winter stuff. It's easy to go ahead and put something in the spring and still keep it looking good. So we're gonna take this year, analyze that and see how that goes. I feel very confident.
And financially, we should be better off too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think if you guys, along the lines of flower pot / landscaping, if you remember towards the end of last year when we purchased the stone house. It wasn't being mowed correctly. It was scalping off the grass. This year, because Dan does have a background in turf management. We brought that back in-house again, and he sent me some pictures. If you've driven by the stone house after they cut, it looks like a golf course. It is beautiful. So again, we brought that in-house as well this year.
I think that's Cascade Connections worthy.
Yeah, that's great though, because we didn't have the
Yeah,
capacity.
we did not, or the knowledge too, because now we've got the knowledge to teach the staff.
Even if our
And the
budget,
staff is soaking it up. So
Yes,
they're learning more and finding pride in making those lines go.
even if our budget stays the same and we do more, then we've succeeded too.
Yeah.
Meaning the spring, whatever, yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
so the next Cascade Connection should come out in the next few weeks. And we did put in a part about about the DDA and some of this basic information. I think I get worried that people are seeing it too much, but it seems like you can't say it too many times, right? I feel like it's just like an update of the same stuff, but.
Communication's one of those things, at the point you're like sick of saying it, is at the moment people are just starting to get it.
I totally agree.
Okay, then I'm
How
gonna.
many times do they ask me, what's going on?
And you
What's
have
going
to
on?"
say it
Exactly.
in multiple channels. You have to surround people with it and club them over the head, and that's when people get it. It's crazy.
They just won't read it.
And if people,
Yeah, good
if
point.
you know every time you're doing a project, you're gonna get, which makes sense to have people question the funding, but they need to know that this is this funding source. It's not coming from. Their tax, right? Like this is set up for this purpose.
And that's why you have to hit it, Cascade Connections on the website, on social media, and then I always say, put those billboards up right there on the site, and then people will start getting it.
Next item is DDA manager hiring. Got a good lead on somebody. I'm hoping it goes well later this week and I should have an update on that. Library refresh is on schedule to be completed in June. I just met with Lulu and Ashley before this meeting. We brought the furniture purchase in-house to save some significant dollars. And we were told by a few experts that there was no way that that was gonna work, that we didn't have the capacity to do it, and it wasn't gonna come in on time. All the furniture is here, and we are under budget, and it is getting installed the rest of this week.
That's
So-
Nice
awesome.
job.
The only, yeah. Now, I will say a lot, if you run into Lulu, it was Lulu and Ashley that made that happen. They sat and counted chairs and sat in chairs and looked at the aesthetics and the design. So,
For Kent County.
yeah.
I saw the steel case semi backed up.
Say it again?
I said I saw the steel case semi backed
Yeah,
up yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. And then the only thing that is gonna delay it from opening early is we are at the mercy of all things, the shelving company. So the book shelving is actually delayed, but it is gonna be it is beautiful. They're doing such a great job in there. It looks great. Very cozy. It has a whole different feel than it used to. I mean, it's,
Can we go in it anytime, like, is it open to the public?
no, but we can probably sneak in there.
Okay, got it.
And then along those lines, the other thing that the board did approve was dollars to update the AV system, and then anything in the Wisner Center, anything from those double doors back this way. So that's gonna happen the month of July after they're done and move back into there. So all public meetings in the month of July will be held at Fire Station 1. So our meeting that month will be over at Fire Station 1 because this room will not be available. We'll set out some information and get it out there.
So
Pretty cool.
with that comment about the AV, and again, I was talking with Jessica beforehand and trying to listen to that. The
Mhm.
OHM meeting and so forth. Will there be any like microphones coming from the ceiling to try to grab?
That's a really good question. Either that or we'd have to just do a better job of getting people to actually use those handheld mics. They were all out that day and people just get so.
No
they
one was
forget about
using
them.
them.
But I think, yes, we're gonna look at all those options. We're gonna go out to RFP
Okay.
to actually get a system. there were improvements, I guess, to this room back during COVID, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
things that just keep continuing to break. So we just need to start over. So yes, we'll look at all of those updated, the most modern technologies for this room. Yeah. I mean, even Lauren and I are having to share this one because that one is broke. So we need something.
Okay.
But I'll send out a reminder about that meeting in July, and then we'll have some specific areas to park in. We don't get a huge crowd here of residents, but like the board meeting gets more. So anybody that's a board commission member, staff member, we're gonna park in the back of the fire station and walk through. That way the minimal parking up front can be for our visitors. Pedestrian bridge over the river is almost complete as well. On schedule, under budget, which is great. And Kent County Road Commission saw the improvements that we paid for and are now redecking the bridge. They've already done one lane, so that whole bridge is gonna be brand new when it opens up in a few weeks. So even though our project technically is gonna be finished, it won't look like it's complete because they're gonna continue on with the decking, but everything's moving along great. We had some complaints about the timing of the lights last week. We called them, they came out, they adjusted them. So if you see any concerns or have questions about timing there.
What's the
Let me
ETA
know.
on the completion?
I'm sorry,
I think it's a selfish question, but what's the ETA on the completion?
our part is next week.
But like to
But
get the door, like the
overall-
corridor open overall.
I have to, let me look and see. I don't know what the county's timeline was.
What is decking?
I think I heard.
Sorry if I'm.
Oh, the actual
missing.
bridge itself, that section of pavement and it's concrete, that's actually the deck of the bridge.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's basically redoing the road, but that particular area of a bridge is called the deck.
Like pavement in essence.
Yeah, they actually are going down to the concrete. They're replacing the concrete and then the pavement on top of it.
It does need it, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
And they're gonna go back to the other side and do the outer rail?
No,
Okay.
Yep.
I already know, I'm not the smartest person in the room, so.
Only at
Um,
a time, but
Bridge.
Ribbon cutting ceremony.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking to see what the, oh yeah, ribbon cutting ceremony. We're probably gonna wait and do it during Heritage Festival, just kind of dedicate it. We're gonna have a big community event. I know summer's a hard time to get people away from vacations and things like that, so we've got an event in September, so we'll do a hand, during that time. I don't see the completion date for the decking, Rishi, but I will find out and let you know.
It might be cool to have kids ride their bikes through as soon as you cut the ribbon.
If
Something
anybody
like-
has walked the completed side, it is a whole different feel of that bridge. I mean, you actually feel safe. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I think it's great. Yeah, that's great. I see a lot of people walking.
Couple of business updates, 6660 Old 28th Street, which is that law office that's going up. Looks great, yeah. Scott Kramer, who's one of the partners of that firm, he sits on our planning commission now as well. But yeah, real happy with the way that looks, and it's a real good example for anybody else in the village as we move forward with redevelopments. Cascade and 28th Street Village, I call it the Village Center. I've kind of renamed it because I actually don't know the technical name for that shopping plaza, but I figure I'm gonna use the word village because it seems appropriate to me. They are doing some facade improvements. They did put in for a site grant. It's kind of under review right now. It's a lot of landscaping, not a lot of real structure changes to their buildings. And then there is a potential development in Centennial Park on Charlevoix and 28th Street. It went before the planning commission last night, it was given a lot of conditions. It's a bank that's looking at going there where it's currently a parking lot. So we'll see if.
Another brick and mortar bank.
So,
I mean,
Not here.
I never have dealt with a brick and mortar bank.
so
they don't care. They just want this. They should just pay for the sign, literally, just.
we can talk after, because one of our trustees had a really good theory about why all of these brick and mortar banks are in Cascade. And it has nothing to do with the traffic that's going in and out.
Really?
It's marketing.
June 13th is when it's slated to be done.
June 13th.
That's what it says.
Oh, thank you. Where'd you find that at?
The bridge.
Oh,
Heaven forbid it's
AI
not
and Cascade.
on our website.
That's from Kent County.
Okay, no, that's perfect. I'm staring at it. I don't have to.
CountyRoads.net says, phase 2 of the project began March 17th and is scheduled for completion by June 13th. During this phase 2A, traffic is somewhere it said something about decking.
We all know what decking is now.
Anyway, it says June 13th.
Okay, perfect. So 2 weeks.
I have one quick question. I know everybody wants to get out of here. This is just totally anecdotal. I don't know. It's a weird question, but so many sirens in the middle of the night lately, because maybe I live right above the fire station, but do they have different jurisdiction over there? Not that I care. I feel like I'm in the big city, but where are they? All these sirens. has
Are you
been-
talking like the emergency sirens or the
Yeah,
actual
the
fire?
fire department.
Well, last week you had all the tornado warnings. I mean, it was.
Yeah, but it's been going on for like a month.
So,
but
so you're talking about tornado warnings or you're talking about emergency?
I don't know. It's been all night long.
I mean, I don't think that the chief has said that calls or runs are up. I can ask him if it's.
No worries.
Well,
And I don't want to bother you with
the
it. I'm
other
just
thing-
curious.
Let me make sure we don't have anything that was either broken before and is now fixed or something malfunctioning. So I'll talk to the
I
chief.
like it. It makes me feel like I'm sitting in New York or something, but you know.
Well, I don't think we want that.
All right.
So yeah, short and sweet, but that's what I have.
Awesome. Any other business for Article 8? Then we'll move on to Article 9, acknowledging any visitors wishing to speak regarding any agenda or non-agenda. Do you care to speak, sir? No. Just here for the fun of it. Excellent. All right, with that, I guess can I get a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion. to
I will
adjourn.
second that.
There, oh, that was quick. Thank you.
I didn't even have a chance.
All right, meeting is adjourned.
No,
Lorna,
it was
thanks for
because I
coming
just.
tonight.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.